brought my pumpkin in. I've washed off. Every pumpkin has an underside where it was laying in the dirt. So I've washed that off because of course I don't want any dirt to get in while I'm roasting it. So now we're just gonna carve it in half. Because this pumpkin, I end up roasting these. I could carve it and boil it down. I could carve all that skin off of it, but that is a lot of work. And I'm not afraid of doing hard work if the end result ends up being better. But in this case, the flavor is actually better if you roast it. So not only do I not have to peel off the skin, which is, as I just said, a major job, I get a better product in the end. So that's what I do. This is one of my bigger ones. We had 25 pumpkins this year, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot to you, but seeing that each pumpkin produces, this is a Dickinson Heritage pumpkin, seeing that each pumpkin produces anywhere from 4 to 6 pies, 25 pumpkins is a lot. Now I like to make pie for Thanksgiving, but I don't like to make 100 pies. So as you can imagine, I have given pumpkins away to just about everybody. I'm sure bringing up to work. Anyone, if you know me, I have offered you a pumpkin. I myself have roasted, this will be probably my 10th one. And that's, when you think about it, that's enough for 40 pies or 60. That's plenty for anybody. All right, so now I've got it split and I'm gonna take this top off. And I use this later for crafts. I make little fabric pumpkins and I hot glue it on the top. Makes a little nice project. Now, just get your spoon in there and split it. Enough to get a finger in. One more knife here. Now, you can see the inside. If I was saving seeds, which I've already done, I've already saved my pumpkin seeds for next year. This is a heritage pumpkin, heirloom pumpkin. So these seeds will produce another round of beautiful pumpkins next year. I would take these, I'd wash them, dry them, and preserve them for next year. But like I said, I've already done that. Now, everyone I gave a pumpkin to, they can do that. In fact, I told them that. So make sure you save the seeds. You can have your own pumpkins next year. Whether they do or not, it's up to them. If they're smart, they'll know I'll just give them another pumpkin next year and they won't even bother. Because I don't know if a family needs more than one of these. They certainly do not need 25. All right. Now, so there are several things you can do with these seeds. In the past, I've dried them out and used them with my chicken winter feed. And that has worked very nicely. Chickens appreciate this immensely in the summer, as they do in the winter. So that is actually what I'm gonna do today. I have enough winter chicken feed stored up right now. I don't need to go through the whole process of drying these out for them. So they are gonna get a tasty treat today. Or my pigs can have some. Just all the innards. And they'll appreciate all those juicy pumpkin bits too. That's one. And how I do it, I already have my cookie sheet trays here. Flip it upside down, onto the tray it goes, and into the oven. I will go do my other half now, and I'll see you back when these are done roasting. I roast them at 350, around 40 minutes. Could be a little more, depends on the size of the pumpkin. I know when they're done when I press on the top and it softly folds in. I'll see you back in a bit. They roasted for about an hour and a half. This is that beautiful color. If you're interested, they're a Dickinson Heritage pumpkin. You can get the seeds on Seed Savers. They're really a beautiful pumpkin. So now I'm going to scrape them out. I'm going to put them in here and I'm going to puree them. I had it upside down. I'm flipping it over. The reason why I'm doing it the next day is I don't want to do this when this is all hot and steamy. It's so much easier to work with when it's cold like that. So I actually, when it's done, I turn it off and just leave it in the oven to cool overnight. And that's where I let it stay. Now, you're going to need about 2 cups of this puree to make one pumpkin. As you can see, I'm gonna have a lot more than that. So what I do with the rest of this is I will, I'll take it and I'll put it in freezer bags in 2-cup increments, and I'll freeze them flat. And that way we can have pumpkin in whatever we want all winter long. Now, we had a huge harvest of pumpkin this year, even with me making it for people for Thanksgiving. I want to make sure I don't get that rind. See how that ribs up there? Ribs up there. I want to make sure I don't get that. The rind is the one part we leave for the pigs. Anyways, I ended up having 25 of these beautiful pumpkins, but that is about 12 more than I need, even with making them for ourselves and to sell. So I ended up giving a lot of these pumpkins away. So if you worked with me, you got a pumpkin. It's funny, I would keep showing up to work every day with these massive pumpkins. All right, so I just puree that. Doesn't take long. That's it. Other pumpkins that tend to be a little stringy, I also put through a sieve to just get any little strings out. But this is such a beautiful pumpkin, I don't have to do that. Now, obviously, this is an extra step. If you want to go buy a can of pumpkin, you can, but I'm trying to show you how to make it from a pumpkin you grow yourself. So we'll come back here a little bit later and I'll show you how to transform this into the perfect pumpkin pie. All right, welcome back. Now this is where I make my crust. This is the crust I use for pretty much everything. This is a single crust because obviously you don't put a top crust on a pumpkin pie, but feel free to double this if you're making a double crusted pie. Now, it is about 1 cup of all-purpose flour. I say about 1 cup because it depends. If I really pack this down or if I have it be loose, it's a completely different amount. What I want is 4.5 ounces. I have 5.5 right now, so I want obviously a total of 10. In my scale. See, that looked like it was a cup and it's not quite, so I need a little bit more. That's it right there. So then I need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I use pink Himalayan salt. Got some right here. You don't want it to be too coarsely ground. That goes in there. Now I'm just going to mix this together with my pastry blender. And now I take a stick of butter. This is an important part. This butter just came out of the fridge. I want it to be as cold as possible. You notice I'm not really touching it very much. So I'm gonna take my knife and I'm also gonna continue to not touch it. We want that because you don't want your butter to melt. Melted butter does not make a flaky crust. So there's no rhyme or reason to how big I'm cutting my slices. I just want enough to make it easier to work through that pastry blender. Also, the size of my container here is important. I use this is just an old Tupperware pitcher. I like that one because it's just a little bit bigger than my pastry blender. I wouldn't want a bowl that's a lot bigger because the whole point is the pastry blender rubs against the side. And if it's a lot bigger, then it's not going to do that as efficiently. So the size bowl you use is actually quite important. So I'll put my butter in. And now, this is the motion I do. I go down and up. I'm using the edges of my bowl and the pastry blender to get that butter into small size pieces. I've heard, and every once in a while you just kind of give your pastry blenders. I don't like a little scrape. I don't like new pastry blenders. This is actually my second one. I've actually wore through one already. I got my first one at a yard sale many years ago. This one I bought at a consignment store. You can find them on Etsy. You don't want... I taught a class and I bought a bunch of new ones. And I kid you not, those things didn't even last the class. Screws were popping out here and there. It was terrible. So find yourself a nice old tool. I tend to be a fan of antique and older tools. They just work better than their modern counterparts. I'm almost there. Do you see how the flour is now looking kind of yellowish? All nice and loose. I'm not even touching it at all. Tap it like that. Now I'm going to go get us some cold water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, now I need 2 to 3 tablespoons of cold water. I just got this out of the tap, but as cold as I could get it. I'm gonna start with 2 because I can always add more water. I don't want to add more flour. Now here is where it's important. I don't want to touch this too much. So I'm gonna use a mechanism where I'm kind of making a fist with my hands and pulling it all together, but it's with purpose. I'm not just randomly putting my hand in there hoping and wishing it comes together. I'm going to do it as few times as I have to in order to make what I need to make with purpose and intention. Ready? 1. You see how very soon it's coming together? And I can get a feel pretty quickly if I think I need more water. I don't think I do. I think this is gonna be enough. See, each motion I do is an attempt to bring it together as a ball, and it's almost there. Think of how little I'm actually touching this. It's almost there. It's done. That's it. I have 1 ball of dough, and I'm gonna drop it on my counter. All right, now, speaking of counters, I'm going to lightly dust my counter with just a little bit of that flour. I don't want to do too much because remember how I measured that flour? I'm just also gonna, I don't want to suddenly add more flour than what I need. I'm still not really touching this. I tend to use a French rolling pin. I just prefer it. I'm able to have more control over the pressure I placed on this because it's all about pressure. All right, so now I make a little bit of a cross. And I start rolling. And I do a lot of flipping back and forth because I'm telling you, in all of my years of experience of making pie dough and teaching other people to do it, what the problem is when it sticks to your counter. Then you kind of stretch it to pull it up, and you don't want to take any chance of it sticking. I'm picking up some of that flour, dusting it off, and rolling. Picking up, dusting, and rolling. See, it was sticking a little bit there. Let me just grab just a smidge more flour. All right. Okay. Oh, I can feel that it will stick there. I can already see how it's got a ripple there. I don't want to take any chances of it sticking, but I'm taking off all that extra flour. Let me move this out of my way here. I need to start getting serious. All right. Now, do you notice how I'm using the palms of my hands to go through this mechanism, this motion? Now I'm flipping it, palms. Forth and flipping my palms. I want to bring this together because I don't want the big split there. So it's kind of like working with pottery. You're kind of determining where things go. If I see there's a big gap there, see there's a gap there, I can just gently manipulate it so it's not, so they come together. And it's important when you roll that it's all even. I see it's a little thicker out here, so I'm just gonna gently just put those finishing touches on it. All right, and that's it. I want it a little bit bigger than a pie plate I'm using. How I do it, now it shouldn't be sticking because I've been doing that back and forth mechanism. I fold it in half, then I take my half and I put it in the pie crust and I unfold it. Now it's important to support it here. And you want to let it gently drop in. You don't want to do any tugging or pulling because that's when, as it bakes, it will shrink back on itself. And you don't want that. I'll press some pieces together there. Okay. There we go. I'm gonna go back to grabbing my knife that I used with my butter. Okay, I'll get a knife. I must have cleaned that one up. I'm just gonna trim off some of the extra here. Some people get very fancy with how they do the edges, and I have my moments, but this is just a family pie. We just need for it to do what it needs to do, and that just tastes delicious. I'm gonna take a little piece there and fill in that gap because I like some crust and I don't want to have an open spot. Cut away. Cut away. All right, now it's time to make that filling. I'll see you back here in a minute. All right, it's time to put all those pieces together. I have 2 cups of that wonderful pumpkin filling that we made earlier, so I'm just gonna put that in. So in that goes, I don't waste any of that. And then we have a 1/4 cup of very strong coffee that I also made earlier. The coffee really brings out the pumpkin flavor. This idea came to me a little over a year ago when I was having a pumpkin latte. And it was so good. I thought, well, why couldn't I do that with a pumpkin pie? So I do. So 1 1/4 cup of half and half. There's a 1/4. Here's the 1. All right, there's that. That's for our liquid. I'm gonna put in 2 eggs. 1. Now for sweetener, you can use whatever you'd like. You can do, we have one little fly that is just determined to be part of this pumpkin pie. I keep shushing it away. Now you need 3/4 cup of sugar. You can use brown. You can use maple sugar. I'm just using white here. But whatever your taste tells you that you can do. Now, for the seasonings. This is where, again, it kind of deviates a little bit from what you're probably used to. The teaspoon of cinnamon is pretty standard. And so is a 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. But then, there's my cloves. Now I go into a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. I love black pepper. I put it in so many things. It adds such a nice little bit of warmth to the whole process. I want a 1/2 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. The freshly grated really does make a difference, so we're gonna go through that effort. There are certain things where it does matter, certain things where it doesn't. You notice I didn't freshly crack the pepper? I could have, but I have found that by the time you're done baking it, freshly cracked versus not doesn't really matter so much, but for some reason the nutmeg, it really does matter. So I'm gonna put in about the equivalent of a 1/2 teaspoon. All right, there's that. And I do the same thing for ginger. I buy ginger by the root, I guess is the proper word, and I put it in the freezer for whenever I want to use it, because if I was to keep it fresh, I don't use it quite often enough that it doesn't go bad. So I stick it in the freezer, and then you can just grate it. You don't have to peel it. The peel ends up staying on the outside. The ginger that I want is on the inside. Now ginger adds such a nice flavor to this, especially with the coffee. Can you see the fibers? They stay on the outside, and all I have on the inside is some nice freshly grated ginger. Now my recipe says a 1/2 teaspoon. Obviously that's a little bit more, but that's fine. I really like ginger. And it goes. Just wash up my hands for a second here. The only thing missing now is the salt. So I'm gonna bring back my little cup of salt over here. And for that, I want a 1/2 teaspoon as well. Now I just stir it all together. Honestly, a lot of these pumpkin spice things, it's mainly the spice that you taste. So spice is extremely important in a pumpkin pie. You want to make sure you have all the flavors balanced and right. Obviously, you want a nice roasted pumpkin too for that sweetness and the flavor and the color, but the spice is where it's at. All right. I want to make sure as I'm whipping it that there's no piece of that egg left, which there's not. I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. I'm going to bake it for 40 minutes. Some people blind bake the crust first. I don't. I just put it in the raw crust. All right, now into the oven that will go for about 40 minutes or until a knife in the center comes out clean. All right, it's been about 45 minutes. I took a knife and inserted it near the center. It came out clean. So now I'm gonna pull my pie out. While I was baking a pie, I decided to make another one for dinner. So that's in there too. I'll let that go another minute or so. But here is a beautiful pumpkin pie that I'm gonna let sit on the counter for about a couple hours. Then I'll put it in the fridge and we'll enjoy it later today. And that, my friends, is how it is done.